Hi, I'm Will Lockamy.
And I'm Reed Lockamy.
Welcome to the Iron Bowl Hour.
Or as we like to call it, the show that is liking the looks of the Cougars more and more each week.
And I feel the same way about Houston's football team.
On tonight's show.
As a recruiting expert, how many stars would you give this show?
5. Nice. Now look, if you've got a really ugly family member or something, then that makes sense, right?
Let's not
get
even
that
bring
person
Kentucky into this.
Right, okay, we want that.
From atop Red Mountain at Vulcan Park and Museum, it's the Iron Bowl Hour.
All right, Reed, what do you say we agree to disagree?
I agree. Let's do it.
I disagree. Let's not.
No, I agree to it. We're going to do it.
Not. The Iron Bowl ended how most experts, including ourselves, predicted it would. Since both teams won't be playing this upcoming weekend, let's take a look at a hypothetical scenario. If Cam Newton returned for his senior year, would Auburn have won this year's Iron Bowl? No, they would not have won the game. So much is put on Cam Newton and Nick Fairley as well. Reed, those are phenomenal players. He won the Heisman. We all know that. We know what he's doing now in the NFL. But with that said, I think Auburn fans would take that offensive line 10 times over than have Cam Newton back.
No, you're forgetting that last year's Auburn team was a one-man team, and the one man was Cam Newton, right? And so logic just stands to, if he's there, then yes, they win the game. So yes, they would win the game if he had come back for his senior season.
So you think he was more important than the other 18 starters that were lost off of last year's team?
Were there other starters on the team? It was just the one starter on the team last year, and he was the one that made the difference, right? Listen, also don't forget, look at how similar the games were in certain ways, right? You had Alabama came out, and it looked like, oh, they're definitely going to win the game, and then all of a sudden, at the beginning of the second half, you have Ontario McCaleb runs the ball all the way back, and momentum sort of shifts, and that's where Cam Newton comes in and wins the game. Because here's what Cam Newton did, if you have already forgotten, last year at Auburn, he won every game, right? What he didn't do was throw the ball straight to the other team and let them run in for a touchdown, right? So if Cam Newton's there, then definitely they win.
But here's the thing. I think if he would have had an offensive line like Clint Mosley has this year, I think he would have plenty of times thrown the ball right to the other team because he wouldn't have had time. He would have been sacked more often. Granted, we know he's a better quarterback than Clint Mosley, but with that said, you can't give him all of the credit.
It's debatable whether or not Clint Mosley has an offensive line at all this year. But what I'm saying is, look, Cam Newton was a special sort of player who was able to raise the level of play for everyone on the team last year. Sure, the offensive line was more experienced last year, right? But when you have a leader like that on your team, he's able to rally the troops and get people to play the way they need to in order to pull out tight games and big ones like they did last year in the Iron Bowl. I think you would have seen maybe something similar certainly be possible this year. So I can't rule it out. When you watch the game, I know it was a dominating performance by Alabama in a lot of ways, but you can't discount what sort of an impact a player like that has. So I think, yes, they would have won the game.
Big impact player, I think too much credit is given to Cam Newton.
Well, he was the only player on the team last year, so you can't give him too much credit.
I've heard that.
This weekend, if LSU beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, we will most likely see LSU and Alabama in the Game of the Century Part 2. If this happens, would that be fair to the other one-loss teams in the country? No, this is not fair to other one-loss teams. It's not fair to 3-loss teams. It's not fair to 7-loss teams. It's not even fair to UAB, right? This is not fair to anyone. So this is a ridiculous system. No, it's not fair.
Well, here's the thing. It's no more fair for Alabama or not fair for another one-loss team. It might as well be Alabama, Reed. They're clearly the second best, if not the first best team in the country.
I thought what you were going to say is that, and this would be accurate, that they're the second best team in their division of their conference. So the notion that somehow they should play to be the best team in the country is an absolute joke, right? And is an offense to people who are intelligent, right? So this is not fair to anyone at all.
Well, here's the thing, Reed. They may be the second best team in the division of their conference.
They are.
With that said, that also makes them the second best team in the country, which means they should play for the national championship.
Yeah, but okay, listen. I can't believe I have to explain this so many times to people.
Please do.
So the whole idea with naming a national champion, right, should be to try to determine on some level who's the best team in the country.
Correct.
Right? That's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Now, the notion that we would have LSU and Alabama, we already know who's the better team between those. Now, you may have to convince some Alabama players of this, but we already know that LSU is the better team. They beat Alabama. Some people have forgotten that, right? So we don't need to decide that game anymore. It would be better to have another conference champion, right? Especially if a team like Oklahoma State is able to beat Oklahoma this weekend, right? Then they would be a conference champion, actually won their conference. They would have more quality wins than Alabama did, even though everybody likes to say Alabama's the best team teams ever existed and all that. And that would be a more reasonable championship game.
Right. Well, it's definitely not fair to someone what's happening here. And I'll tell you who it's not fair to, LSU. It doesn't make any sense that LSU had to go to Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama and now has to play an SEC championship game, try to beat Georgia, which is not going to be an easy thing to do.
Will it not? I don't know.
Who knows? Georgia could be good. Nobody really knows at this point.
Yeah.
And then has to then go and try to beat Alabama again. What if Alabama comes back and then beats LSU in the national championship game? So now they're 1-1, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And if that were to happen, some people said, "Oh, that's going to be a championship rather split between 2 teams," but that's ridiculous. It'll be a championship split between 3 teams: Alabama, LSU, and Houston. Right?
Because they're undefeated, right? Houston,
Look,
we all forget
Houston
about
hasn't lost a single football game, right?
That's
So
right.
what are we saying to Houston at the beginning of the season? Hey, Houston, have a fun season, win all your games, and it won't even matter. You can't even sniff the championship. What a joke this system is. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Reed, stop. You're making me agree with you. I can't do this any longer.
Can I go again?
Nope. In the past 20 years, there's been an increasing media spotlight on coaches and their families, primarily thanks to YouTube and Facebook. The constant exposure has its benefits at times, but more often than not, it reveals things that most coaches would want to remain hidden. Should coaches keep their families off limits to the media and social networking? Reed, I don't see any benefit to have these coaches having their families paraded around in public. Kids are going to say stuff that's crazy. We know wives are going to say stuff that's super crazy.
Yeah.
I just don't see any point in having these family members out doing interviews and tweeting.
I'm having a hard time even having this conversation now because all I can think about is how much trouble we're going to be in when we get home this evening.
Naturally.
Yeah. All right. Well, look. Here's the thing. Well, that's easy to say because you can pull out examples of this coach's wife has said something weird, or this kid has tweeted something weird, or something like that. But let's not forget. Then you have other situations where it's desperate. It's extremely important. We'll say for the coach's wife, for example, to be in the public. Let's take Terry Saban, for example.
Okay.
Right? She's the only thing that makes that man seem like a human being, right? So if you're trying to recruit kids to your program, then you need a Terry Saban to be on television with Rick Carley and Paul Feinbaum and or yuck, we're in a boat and blah 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 and whatever.
But
look, so that's important.
But then you take somebody like Christy Malzahn, and she makes that guy look like an alien.
Well,
and see, that's the thing there, is that you have both sides of the coin here. I think it's a good idea just to keep them out of the public eye.
No, I don't agree with that, because here's the thing. Listen, there's a difference between college football and NFL, right? And there's something about college football that we love, and there's something about the NFL that for me just seems impersonal. Okay, and I think this is part of it, is that college football is sort of about, groups of people who are working together, and it's families and all that, and that's not an Auburn reference. It's just that this is how, people like the idea of, hey, look, it's a coach, and he's coaching some kids, and these aren't professional athletes, they're students in school and all that.
Semi-pro.
And to go back to what Nick Saban said, this is why he came back to college football out of the pros, because it's a different atmosphere, and I think that the family is a part of that. So I don't think it makes sense to say, we got to act like these people don't exist. Now look, if you've got a really ugly family member or something, then that makes sense, right?
Let's not
get
even
that
bring
person
Kentucky into this.
Right, okay, we want that. But other than that, I think, look, let's let the family members be a part of it. That's part of the whole experience of college football, and I think it would be weird to try to shut them out.
Yeah, you know who proves my point for me?
Who's that?
Somebody we love, Reed, Barbara Dooley. She told a story on national radio about flashing her husband in public.
Yeah, that was a disturbing story.
You got to keep these folks out of the media.
But look, here's the thing though. Take Barbara Dooley, right? Who you just discussed. But everybody loves Barbara Dooley, right? Listen, she's probably the only reason that Derek Dooley still has a job, right? And I know people said, oh, she's bringing too much criticism. She's saving that kid's job. He's doing a terrible job. But everybody loves Barbara Dooley, right? So therefore, we're like, all right, Derek, we'll put up with him. So look, it's saving his job.
Yeah, Derek Dooley's loving his mom going around telling stories about stripping in public.
Well, he should be. It's making him a lot of money.
Reed, let's go up to the top of the Vulcan and freeze our buns off with Justin Hokanson. Reed, it's time for rapid fire questions with Rivals and AuburnSports.com analyst Justin the Hokey Pokey Hokanson.
All right, here we go. Who makes for better recruiters? Offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, or pretty girls on campus?
Pretty girls on campus.
Okay.
Next.
Should UAB consider hiring a pretty girl to be their new head coach?
Yes.
Couldn't hurt. Sure.
People say Ed Orgeron is a great recruiter, but if you were a high school student, would you want him to know where you live?
Absolutely not.
No. Would you rather be spanked by Nick Saban or popped with Trooper Taylor's towel?
Pop with Trooper Taylor's towel.
Okay.
Why doesn't Alabama evaluate kicking recruits based on their ability to kick?
They need more linebackers. I don't know.
Why doesn't Auburn evaluate defensive recruits based on their ability to tackle people?
Oh, man.
It's because they hate winning.
They don't.
Who's more likely to smile when speaking to a recruit, Nick Saban or the Nick Saban statue?
I think the statue's got a little bit more personality.
If Gene Chizik smiled while talking to a recruit, would his teeth show?
No, I've seen him smile, and I think it's impossible.
Interesting. Should college football players be paid more than they currently are?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Should college players be allowed to have Twitter accounts?
Yes.
Better pregame tradition, the flight of the eagle at Auburn or the wishing you were somewhere else at Mississippi State?
The flight of the eagle at Auburn.
Okay.
Come on.
As a recruiting expert, how many stars would you give this show?
5.
Nice.
Good job, Justin. Not bad.
Let's go do the hokey pokey.
Okay,
right,
sounds
let's do
good.
it.
We're still here with Rivals.com and Auburn sports analyst Justin Hokanson. Justin, does it weird you out that you make your living following kids around?
At times, yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, do you have
It's
to
a
do a
little
lot of that? You have to really go watch a lot of these kids play?
You do at times have to watch them. The calling them is where you got to get you stories and you're trying to get quotes from these guys. And at times it is you're like, man, I'm bugging this kid, but you have to. It's your job.
He's got homework to do.
Right. Justin?
Oh, there you go. Recruiting is something I've not ever followed very closely, but it seems sort of like a magical practice of looking into the future and telling how do these coaches evaluate these kids? How can you tell who's going to be a good college prospect?
I mean, you're right. It's tough. I mean, there are things that you can't predict. You don't know how a kid's going to get in there, and mentally, is he going to get it? Is he going to go through the grind? Is he going to practice hard? Is he going to develop? But I mean, these guys have been coaching all their life, so they know what to look for in the positions and the kids that they're recruiting, whether it's footwork, whether it's leverage, all the different stuff. They know what they're looking for. We maybe don't. They do, but.
Hey, listen, you guys give these kids, you rate them on a star system. Do you actually do some of that yourself?
I don't.
Part of that?
We have regional analysts, Southeast, Midwest, West Coast. Those guys try to get out and watch as many kids from their region as they can, and then they give their input. And then, of course, we have national guys that kind of have a say-so as well, but obviously the regional guys have more say-so in terms of where these kids, get ranked and pushing them up and down.
And you think coaches pay attention to those, how many stars a kid has, or do they know their own system?
I think they pay attention. I don't know that they recruit by it, but certainly the rivals and stuff, certainly coaches will go in there, and if they're looking for a kid, if it's desperate and they lose out on something, they'll go in there and they'll type in a kind of player they're looking for, and they'll take a list and go check out who comes up, and they do that at times. Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of stars, I think they pay attention to it PR-wise. I think they want to say, hey, we had the #1 class in the country, but they don't look at a kid, say 5-star, and take their recommendation over what they believe. No.
It seems like if I was a coach, I would just spend most of my time just looking at the rival stuff and really just tell people, like, oh, I've really been analyzing these kids.
That's right.
And really sitting back playing Xbox.
Make him 6 stars.
Yeah, absolutely. What makes a really great recruiter? I mean, I think you have different styles. You have a Trooper Taylor. People say that guy's a great recruiter. And then you have somebody like Nick Saban, who's obviously a really good recruiter, but I think two totally opposite ends of the spectrum. What makes a good recruiter, do you think?
I mean, you make a good point. I mean, Saban is, first of all, he's the head coach, but he's been in the NFL. That's a pedigree that you can go into a living room and say, I can get your kid to the NFL. But he's such a business type person that I think parents can relate to him and look at him and say he's very businesslike. He's gonna, you're gonna take care of business if you go there. Trooper Taylor is, I mean, he has those assets, but Trooper Taylor is one of the most charismatic assistant coaches I've ever seen. I mean, he can relate to kids as good as any coach out there. I mean, he just gets on their level. He can joke with them. He's relaxed with them. They just feel like they're with one of the guys with him. So he really relates to them and just makes them feel comfortable.
I don't know if you've heard this, but Alabama fans can't stand him.
Is that right?
Can't stand him. It's unbelievable. I've never seen such.
Now, you say that Nick Saban is very businesslike with his recruiting. Does that mean he's paying players? Is that what that?
You said that. I didn't say that.
Okay, interesting. When you have these kids who commit to a school, right, and then a lot of times you see some of them change their mind, sometimes like the day of, signing day and all of that. What's your opinion about whether or not schools should keep going after kids who've made a commitment?
I think it's fair game. I think until the kid signs, I think it's fair game. You might commit to a school and then say you still want to take visits, or some kids are different. Some kids absolutely know that's what they want to do. Some kids stay open. I think until he signs, it's got to be fair game, because you never know. A kid might commit early and he thinks he made a good decision, and if you stay after him, you finally get him to visit, and then maybe he realizes there are other places out there. The kid maybe doesn't even realize that he has other opportunities. You have to keep pursuing him. So
he hasn't even seen the girls at other campuses.
Right. I think until he signs, it's got to be fair game.
Okay. Great. We're going to take a break real quick. We're back with more with Justin Hokanson. We're back with Rivals.com and AuburnSports.com analyst Justin Hokanson.
So now that we talk about how the recruits get onto campus, now let's talk a little bit about what happens once they're there and how these programs turn over. Auburn last year obviously had a great season, won all their games, national championship and all that, and then really struggled this year. Where do you see the future for that program? You're there, you see what happens. How long is it going to take them to turn this around from a talent standpoint? Is it a talent issue?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is a talent and experience issue. I think it can be turned around next year. A lot of the guys that were on this team this year, sophomores and freshmen, and they're trying to compete, and that's SEC there's a reason they've won 5 straight national championships. It's the best conference in the country. So when you go in and you're trying to compete with guys who have a year of experience or less, it's a tough deal. Mentally, physically, to be on that level as some of these guys who've been there 3 or 4 years, it's tough. The way they're recruiting, though, I think that next year you'll start to see a little bit of depth. And by 2013, 2 years down the road, it sounds crazy. It sounds like people are so impatient now. But I think 2013, you could see an Auburn team that looks like Alabama and LSU now, where it's talent across the front line, starting lineups, and then there's also those 4-star guys as backups, and you see depth across the board. I think in 2 years, Auburn could look like what LSU and Alabama look like now.
So I've got a question. What is it that makes Alabama such a powerhouse? Is it just Nick Saban? How is it that he's managed to have all of these #1 recruiting classes? How does that work?
That's where it starts. You go back and look at what he did at LSU. And he did the same thing. He raked in, an immense amount of talent at LSU. The guy he knows how to recruit, he knows how to coach, and he knows how to build a program, and he did it at LSU, and he's doing it at Alabama. And, of course, Alabama has a huge fan base. He just had to sort of energize them again, and his kind of past has really energized them when he first got there. And he just knows how to evaluate talent is one of the biggest things. He coached in the NFL for a reason. He can look at kids and know which ones are going to be successful, and he doesn't miss too often.
All right, so recognizing the sort of powerhouse that Alabama is, and now they're about to be involved, it looks like, in this BCS national title game, if we're going to call it that this year. What do you make of this system and the implications if Alabama and LSU do rematch and schools like Oklahoma State wind up winning their conference but are left out? What's your take on the system we currently have in college football?
Well, in terms of the current system, a lot of people are in favor for a playoff, and in terms of entertainment and fun, you look at the basketball tournament, that would be fun to watch, a football playoff. But I'm not on board like everybody else is in terms of thinking that's going to get you the best team, because when the Giants won the Super Bowl, would anybody say they were the best? I think the Patriots were the best team that year. The Giants won when it counted. They won the one game. So it doesn't, just because you have a playoff doesn't mean you're automatically going to get the best team. I think the BCS does a pretty good job in terms of this year. LSU and Alabama are the 2 best teams. I think it's unfair for LSU to potentially have to play Alabama again, because in essence, if they lose that game, Alabama's the national champ, but LSU's going, we beat you. We're 1-1 on the season.
Right.
So it's a tough deal for LSU. I think they're the best 2 teams, so I think they both deserve to be in. But I think it's kind of a raw deal for LSU, because if they lose that game, they feel like they should have a 3rd game.
It just seems like Alabama losing the game during the regular season was the best thing that could have happened.
Absolutely. Now LSU plays an extra game that they don't need. I mean, Alabama's at home going to be in the national championship game, and LSU has to go play a hot Georgia team.
You know, it's funny. Have you ever seen so many Alabama fans be so overjoyed not to win their conference? And they're calling into talk radio. This is great. We're not even playing the conference championship.
It is
and you think normally that,
it's fantastic.
Of course, Will and I don't have a dog in this fight. We're both big Tulane fans, so
Green
it's interesting
Wave.
just to watch. And yeah, go Green Wave.
Well, and the only point is, if LSU were to lose to Georgia, your potentially national championship could be a team that won their division but didn't win their conference against a team that didn't even win their division for the national championship, which would be
people
incredible.
are going to be mad.
As they
Can't
should
wait
be.
to see it.
It's ridiculous.
It is totally ridiculous. Well, thanks so much, Justin, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
For sure. Up next, it's time for the Innisfree Trivia Minute.
Stay tuned for more of the Iron Bowl Hour.
Reed, before we head to Innisfree, we need to congratulate David Hickox. He correctly guessed that the lowest scoring Iron Bowl was 3-0 in favor of Alabama.
Yeah, good job, David. We had, Will, 17,000 people this week think about trying to answer this week's trivia question.
How about that? Congratulations, cheater David Hickox.
Yeah, very good. And viewers, don't forget, you too can be a winner just like David Hickox by answering this week's trivia question and submitting your answer either to the email address or phone number at the bottom of the screen.
Reed, let's go get David Hickox and head to Innisfree.
Sounds good.
Hey, I'm Nick,
And I'm Carrie.
and this is your Innisfree Trivia Minute.
Your question for the week is, when was the first Iron Bowl broadcasted nationally over television?
A, 1962, B, 1964, or C, 1968?
Good luck.
That is all the time we have for tonight. We'd like to thank Justin, the Hokey Pokey Hokanson.
No doubt. Will, after the show tonight, I'm going to go change out the catalytic converter on my car.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm Will Lockamy.
And I'm Reed Lockamy.
Roll Eagle, Reed.
War Tide, Will.
Vulcan Park and Museum. Introduce your family and friends to Birmingham's icon this holiday season. Vulcan Park and Museum will open at 1 p.m. Thanksgiving Day. For hours and admission, log on to www.visitvulcan.com.
Reed, before we head to Innisfree, Reed, before we head to Innisfree. There it is.
I know we're
There's
ready.
your
I know
blooper.
we're ready. Here we go.
That is all the time we have for tonight. We'd like to thank Justin. Wow, I just spit.
What was it?
Hear anything.
I missed it all.